Been easier for everyone to find new talent now that folks can be based remotely, or has that made things more difficult?
Well, remote interviewing has certainly been a big shift for us. It took us probably a good 60 or 90 days to really get into the practice of, if we're going to do all these interviews that we used to do in person remote, like, what does that actually look like? Are you going to give candidates a break for 15 minutes? Well, sometimes it's actually really nice. You're doing a long technical interview and they're sitting at home and you can say, you know what, go take a walk, get a glass of water. Next session doesn't start until 3:30. Chill out, relax, recover, get something to eat. Just even the little things around what kind of whiteboarding are you going to be using during an interview. All of these things for us took time to just figure it out and start changing the actual the routine and practice of the interview when you're doing it remotely.
Yeah, it built in. We had already been starting to interview remote candidates for engineering roles, so we had started to figure it out, I would say, late last year or early this year, like a few months before COVID hit. And by that time, we had finally figured out, like, okay, a lot of what Andy said is kind of what we ended up doing. So we would schedule these sessions and then give people breaks. And then we would just have these Zoom calls that were all kind of centered around the same room so that people would kind of come in and like, oh, the next session is here. So you kind of knew as you were talking to someone that, like, I need to bow out because the next session has to go. I think it ended up being a good experience. We've hired people remote. That's worked out really well. And it's weird to me that we've hired people that are in the Chicago area that I haven't met, in person. It's like we would be working together in an office, but we're not because of COVID. But that seems to me like, if you commit to that, if you commit to making a good process, you can come out with something that's fair for everybody. And that, I think, is the main thing. It also is, it just makes it easier to, it makes it easier going forward, because if you walk away from this feeling like, I really do want to be, enable some kind of remote capacity, whether it's hybrid, whether it's full, you've already got the process built out that can work.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic also, because for the pace at which hiring has gone to in a business area that's really expanded since we've had to go remote, and that we've hired more than what our current office has capacity for. So even if we were to say, okay, let's all head back to the office, we're going to have a significant part of headcount that doesn't have a desk or somewhere to go on that. So that'll have to be one of these things where we phased in to go remote. Well, if we want to go back, that will also have to be kind of a strategy in itself too, to think more about that. Getting back to the interviewing, I would say one of the things I noticed here that I didn't encounter at pre-pandemic was I have some candidates that would call in who work for like GitLab, which has been 100% remote since day one. They don't have an office, it's a non-geocentric organization. And then, so we're going to be seeing more of those types as we keep seeing news, blurbs coming by. It's like, we're getting rid of our office. Some folks are just doing it for purely budget heading into 2021. I need the extra cash. We're letting go of the lease and we've made the jump. Now we're creating kind of a labor pool here that's the office they know. That might have been their first job. That's where they started. Now you're interviewing with our company that has an office. Is that a benefit now or a liability? Even if we start talking about ping pong tables and free food, it's like, well, okay, no, never say that was really a big thing to begin with either. But now you're competing with, hey, my family's at home, my dog's at home, I got food, everything else there, and that's so. That'll be interesting to see where that dialogue comes about. It will the office become a benefit or a liability?
Well, and I think you're going to see the perks that really matter. I don't think anybody really ever truly took a job because of the ping pong table. They took a job because of the coworkers.
Exactly. Yeah, the business is people.
It's kind of a big question, but has productivity increased or decreased with the move to remote?
So I think there is a question of dynamic in the previous question as well as in that question, is that we've seen things go through a cycle to some extent. It definitely feel that we are curiously on the upswing now, probably also because people are getting used really in the rhythm of things after, 60, 90 days, as Andy was mentioning. For us, we did see a sharp increase in productivity right from the get-go, actually. So we measure things such as average number of days with commits per developer, or commits per day, raw throughput, velocity, and across the board, the blended metric that we use actually went up close to 15%, nearly from the week before we had work from home mandatory to the week after that. And sustained, there was a bit of fluctuation throughout the cycle up until today, but sustained increase in productivity overall. And so the question becomes really, where does that come from? And I believe that, at least some of the factors there are just very obvious. One of them is the commute. So a lot of people used to commute from their home to work. For me, it meant a couple hours a day where I was in the car and trying to be productive, listening to audiobooks and those kind of things, but not contributing directly if I were to be a contributor on the team, for example. Beyond that, and I think that's a trait especially true for our engineers in general. I don't want to stereotype completely, but a lot of folks in engineering just find themselves at home, not being able to do their other activity, like, I don't know, go playing cards with friends or go to the restaurant or those kind of things, and find themselves at home. And I kind of can relate. Like, I like to write code as well. I don't get to do it as much as I used to when I was purely a contributor, but they find themselves in that seat, like, well, what am I going to do now? Well, I'm going to write some code, and that's what I do. And that's what I like. And those people sometimes ends up with, like, when you look at the metric of average number of days with commit within the week per developer, and it gets close to 5, 6, 7, it means that your people are committing code on the weekend, basically. And so you want to be mindful and careful of the side effect of that in terms of burnout or in terms of lack of social interaction or other things, and take the lead to make sure that you're, from a culture standpoint, that your team is empowered to take a step back, and take a break. And I think there are some of those folk for whom it's more difficult to do so than others, but equally important. And so I've gone through the cycle of really pushing and saying, no, you need to take a few days of vacation now, not completely ordering it, but and being met with skepticism from their side. And then they come back and they say, oh, it was so good. Like, I feel so much recharged now. Like, getting the feedback after was very important, especially in the first 2-3 cases where we do that. And then the entire team sees it and resonate with him and get into a cadence that's a better cadence from that perspective. So bottom line is, we measure how our engineering team, product and engineering team, are producing. Pretty much everything across the board has gone up. Strangely, our feature cycle time has gone up a bit, which is, the time between ideation and in the end of the customer has gone up slightly, but just a bit. We attribute it to other things as it relates to where our product is at and what's the strategy of our company. But all the rest has trended in the right direction as far as we can measure.
But, on a lot of that stuff, we're really struggling to disentangle global pandemic, work from home. I don't know about everybody else, but I have had a big increase in the number of times where people are just out unexpectedly. They say, you know what, I got to take a day, right? They're sick, they're stressed out. It is the pandemic, the quarantine are definitely taking a toll on teams. And, even when people are still at work, we see it in some of the interactions where things that should have just not been an issue, the little disagreements or the interpretations, things get blown out of proportion sometimes. And I kind of attribute that to this background stress that everybody's dealing with. Everybody knows somebody that's been sick. We've had a number of employees get sick. It's just a tough time for everyone right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an opportunity again for us to do the maximum we can to show support and to enhance collaboration again, you know. It's just look at it as an opportunity to do things differently and better. But overall, it's tough for everyone, for sure.
Before we dive into some of the questions being asked, and everybody please feel free to continue to submit questions via the Q&A. We'll cover one more talking point. And we'd love to just get a sense from everybody, how have your actual products changed or evolved during the pandemic?
When we started working from home, which was back in early March, mid-March maybe, we made a big push and a conscious decision to reorganize our roadmap so we could prioritize remote jobs. And one of the things we thought was we wanted to make remote jobs more of a first-class citizen on all of our job boards. And the whole team really aligned around it. We got the product team to sort of figure out what we wanted to do. It was helpful that we had already planned some of this work for later in the year. We just reorganized it. But we got, you know, several different teams aligning on different things to do, to change the job board, to change how we integrate with applicant tracking systems, and getting jobs that clearly show up as remote, giving you the ability to look for remote jobs. Even our content newsletter now that we send out bi-weekly, that has remote jobs that you can click in, and it goes to any market, wherever they happen to be homed at. So that was a big shift, and I think it was a really positive one, something that a lot of our customers really resonated with them, the ability to do that.
I know for us in the education technology area, it's been there's definitely been some change going on with that. For, as you can expect, some different demands going on with that. Two areas come to mind. One product we have, we call Course Builder, that we really had to fire up here because of you know, how the market was changing, and that was the ability for the professors and universities to get all these courses online in bulk so quickly. That tooling really didn't exist in such a friendly state to where you've got, you know, some professors that really don't work with that type of thing. You know, hey, construct an online course and everything around that. And so the tool for that is something we offer. So we really had to put some effort and focus our resources on building that tool up and showcasing that. And it has drawn a lot of interest, and that helps the roles immensely. The second part of this too has been the online program management that I kind of mentioned earlier. And that is, now there's this heavy reliance of, you know, getting those online leads, because now they're finding themselves have to really compete online, where that was just kind of a side thought for some universities. You know, that's an additional surplus we've got. No, that's core. That's core now. And so it's not that the university is really good at search engine marketing and some of those things. There's where they need that help with that service. And so we've really put a focus on that. And now we're starting to see some names in the education space start to bubble up that you really haven't been mainstream, because they've got such an online success that we've been able to help them with, and moving up in their rankings with now other, you know, mainstay universities are like going, where did they come from so quickly, and what are they doing? My gosh, and what's that mean for our brand going forward? And that's so, yeah, big shifts going on over in that area.
It's probably the biggest disruption that most of us have experienced in our life, what has happened with COVID. And for us, it was really realizing early on that the world was not going to get back to what it was. And so from a product standpoint, it became very clear very early that we needed to be proactive about what we were going to do to be well positioned in the new world that would come after, with the minimal information that we had. I just love Ren Wang, our head of product. The way he put it is that he said COVID is like a genie that came and froze time. At the time, in March, he said for 3 months. It ended up being a lot more than that. But from a product perspective, it's very interesting to operate in that framework of time is freezing now. You know, for us, it's enterprise B2B sales cycle. So it definitely slows down when there is a big disruption like that. And so it's an opportunity. Again, you know, problem can be seen as or a challenge as an opportunity. And definitely from a product standpoint, that's what it was for us. But it all stems from, you know, we've did in multifamily, there is so many things that we had to, and that we executed on as it relates to COVID, with regard to the use of amenity, traceability, cleaning, scheduling, capacity management, all the things, right? Not to go into the detail of the product, but it all stems from, for us, realizing and agreeing that the world of that would be post-COVID would be drastically different from the world of pre-COVID. And it is all stemming from reflecting on that fact, whether it's office space, whether it's multifamily space, whether it's education, whether it's job search, whether it's the financial servicing side of things. Things are not going to go back to where they were. So the question for you is, what are you going to do about it to make sure you're well positioned? And that's very much a product question for us.
We'll continue to address some of these from the QAs being submitted. A couple of questions on just security. What have you done to deal with the new security risk with the move to working remotely?
Mea culpa here, not as much as we would have wanted to, and it's certainly a huge challenge as it relates to now our distributed workforce and our inability to control just networking equipment to start with, right? So I think, I don't know, for us, mobile device management has come front and center to enable our IT operation, MDM, so mobile device management, to enable our IT operation to run a bit more smoothly remotely. But it's certainly not easy handle be all. I don't know. Personally, I think it's a huge opportunity for that particular space of information security for remote worker right now. I don't have the answer. Really, we're a 70% startup as well, so it's smaller. But yeah, for us, it was doubling down on MDM. That point in time was important.
I think if you had an infrastructure that wasn't zero trust to begin with, like it's probably something you're thinking about right now. If you have on-prem servers, like that's just a world that, at least we're not in. We don't have any servers. We're all in the cloud. I suspect that in this group of panelists, do any of you guys have servers?
No. Well, we do have some Macs to do iOS builds. But we are going to migrate them to the cloud because AWS just came on with Macs in the cloud as well. Yeah. But it's more about endpoint security, I think, the trouble, rather than server, of course, everything is in the cloud.
But when you've got office hardware, I remember back in the day, we had a shared drive on the, domain controller in our little startup's office. Like if we were still living in that world, it would be much more difficult. If you're a company that hasn't made the transition to put it all in the cloud and have a Google Drive or whatever the Microsoft equivalent is, I can definitely see how this would be a big struggle.
That's very true.
Yeah, we started off cloud native, so it's been really no transition going on there for us in particular. But I can see where having on-prem can be a real sticking point there.
Back in March, there's a bank I know of where people had to work on the VPN in shifts. I think they did it by last name as to how many. Like I think you got like a 2 or 3 hour shift each day where you could be connected to the VPN. So we live in a charmed life as those of us who are completely in the cloud.
For each of you personally as leaders and executives, what have you had to do personally just to adapt to the working remote lifestyle? And do you think you want to go back?
That is probably a twofold for me. And that is, I've got a pretty good train ride to get downtown. So that was a large part of my day with that. Now I've got a different level of connectivity, different things I can do. And stuff like that. So I've had some productivity gains with that. And I certainly don't miss somebody sitting behind me on the train coughing and hacking on me either. So I haven't had a cold since we've been off, knock on wood. So that's been nice. I would say the big shift here was really keeping up with some of the other employees that they're continuously plugged in. And I think, Francois alluded to it earlier is, hey, take some vacation time here. And take that time off because we have high performers that they just keep going and going and saying, hey, ease up on the throttle a little bit here. And I know that term Zoom fatigue was thrown on here earlier. People really stared and concentrated at that. No, step away and turn off the camera at times too, to give yourself a break for that. It's a conference call on that. But I will say, from a personal standpoint, it still gets down to a work-life balance here. Now we're really enabling things by having constantly been plugged in here, but I also have one-on-ones more often with my team too, to find out, how they're doing it and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, one-on-ones is a good topic, because in my one-on-ones I've really kind of focused more on how people are feeling, and I'm a big subscriber to the idea of the biceps framework of core needs, and the B is belonging, and it's just a core need that people feel like I need to belong to a group, and to me it's one of the needs that is the most under attack throughout this work from home time. Is like, to Andy's point, you might be living alone, single in this city, and you kind of need social interaction, but you're not getting it, and you're really feeling bad about that. And so I check in a lot with people, and we really try to think about like, how can we, try to supplement that. And it's hard because we're all engineers and we're all sort of used to just putting our head down and doing work. And certainly, like, that's how I grew up. It's like, well, I'm just working. I don't really do social stuff. But it's something that we have had to think a lot about. And in my own day, just in my own time, I started rolling out of bed, going to work pretty quickly. And then I was like, you know what, I really need more of a morning time. And I really sort of missed that train ride. So just like reset myself and, read email and read whatever else. So I've really focused on actually waking up way earlier than I need to be up, so I could work out, so I could read stuff, and just kind of have a little time to myself before I go into work. Because I think that I sometimes I laugh about this, that that adage, like, just because we could do something, should we have done that thing? So just because you can wake up half an hour before you need to work, should you? Maybe not. Maybe it works for some people, but not for everybody.
That dichotomy and finding those boundaries between your personal life and professional life, which is very important for your mental stability, can be difficult for some people. And when they find themselves, working from their home, we joke about it, but that's something that we worked on relatively early in the cycle of that transition to remote, which is, you're going to wake up, you're going to go through your morning routine, you're going to do X, Y, Z. Some people actually take the time to read because they really enjoyed that time in the commute to read, and they do their commute on their couch instead of doing it in the train. But it's important to have that intentionality to say, I'm going to get prepared for a day at the office. I'm going to shower, I'm going to dress just like if I was going to the office, and I will go to the office. It just happened to be at home. And then you sit down and you have that mental shift of, okay, now is work mode. Little bit tricky to disconnect because you need to do that as well. But being intentional with regard to how you segment your day, and you understand that you have a professional life and a personal life, and that you need to set boundaries for yourself in that environment, is important, for more so for certain people than others. Some others are okay with it. To answer your question, for me, I'm definitely in the category that Andy was referring to as the 40 years old with kids, with teenagers in the suburb. And frankly, it has worked very well for us as a family. So we are grateful and happy for it. I think also just being more content with what we have and rejoicing the way things are, even though it's difficult, is something that as a family we have grew fond of and grew on as well.
Appreciate everyone's perspective. And last question here as we wrap up. Why will your companies be stronger after COVID?
I think, for Built-in in particular, we really kind of feel the brunt of the changes that companies will have. So focusing on remote jobs, focusing on enabling companies to, be able to be located in any part of the country and hire in any other part of the country is something that's going to be good for us and for them, because I think that that's where not every company is going to move in that direction, but I think a lot of them will. And I think, you know, the idea of a tech hub, or, you know, just having like digital hubs in different cities where you might hire in many places and you can come into an office sometimes if you want to, but you don't have to, and maybe you mostly work from home. And I want to say that Box.com, I think, actually announced something similar where they were going to transition to you work mostly from home and you only come in when you need to do certain collaborative sort of things. And they were transitioning their office space to support that kind of collaboration. And I think that that's going to continue. I think that's a trend that's going to continue. And for us, we have to be really focused on that, but I think we'll come out well in the end for that.
I would say first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question was really, we're going to go back to, you know, a different way of operating, but I think we're going to have a different level of trust. Working remote used to be one of these things, well, are people doing their work and things like that? Now we've had an entire company with a good degree of success, a higher degree of productivity and things. So some of these questions that existed beforehand, I think have been eased. And that's, I would say, a different level of trust has been saying, yeah, we feel good about work remote. We've proven that out with our organization, our culture. It does that well, and we function at a higher degree of performance with that. So I know from our organization, that's one of the things I think I see coming, and it's a good thing too. I mean, like I said earlier, you know, the business is people, and when the people do well, the business does well.
You know, I think paradoxically, in a lot of ways, we've actually become more intimate as a team. You know, I am in everybody's house every day. I meet the toddler, I meet the cat, I meet the dog. And, you know, we sat down and we came up with a working document of our remote norms as a department. And one of the norms was, please turn your camera on. But another norm was, it's okay to fold your laundry and cook dinner and do other personal tasks while you're on a conference call, so long as you're paying attention and you're involved. And just being much more, I think, accepting of the whole breadth of people's lives, that they do personal things while they're at work and they do work things while they're at home. And it is all of a jumble now that we're working from home, and we just need to accept that. And, you know, if somebody's dog starts barking in the middle of a call, COVID, whatever, right? Move on. Don't, you know, grab onto that stuff. We're just all a bunch of people who all have families and home lives as well.
We are right at 1 p.m. Central. So thank you very much, Andy, Peter, Brad, and Francois. And thank you everyone that's attended, and keep an eye out for the post-event surveys that will come out on Monday. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.